So yeah, my name is Joshua Peralta. I'm going to be reading to you from my book, Third and Orange. And this is the beginning of the last final prose piece. My first night in Long Beach was a good one. I'd spent the day at my father's house packing up boxes in an old room and moving them to my new studio apartment. Late in the afternoon, a friend came by with his van to help haul whatever wouldn't fit in my car. The sun flared in the windshield as we drove through traffic on the 605 toward the ocean. I'm going to pause myself here. I realize most of the people that I've been reading in front of may have known me, or they know something about the book prior to. If you don't know anything, this is all taking place in Long Beach, California, where I spent 10 years, much of them with Mark and some other friends. So essentially, this is how I arrived in Long Beach. It was dark by the time we got everything inside. Cold beer was our reward. We cracked the first round in the kitchen, lifted tall cans to new beginnings. The room was all white, walls and jumbled boxes. The first thing I did was hook up my stereo. What we listened to, I can't recall, and what we talked about, I can't remember. But we talked and laughed and listened to music as I went about removing things from boxes. Later, we stood bullshitting on the street, sharing a cigarette before he drove off. Back inside, I was alone, but I felt no creeping fear. I felt no anxiety or confusion about what to do next. My new place was maybe 400 square feet, a shoebox of an apartment, but to me, it felt amazingly spacious and full of potential. I finished the last of my beer and made my bed. A slight buzz made my already dazzling optimism electric. It had been a long day, and I hummed with the unmistakable sense that I was on the cusp of fantastic new experiences. A new adventure had begun. Unforeseen opportunities would soon reveal themselves. Great discoveries awaited me. There were fascinating new neighbors to meet, whole new neighborhoods to explore, streets and blocks and routes to learn. I turned out the lights and laid myself down in the tingling dark. Behind my blinds, a security light in the courtyard shone soft and confident. I closed my eyes and wondered what untold brightness the future held for me here. That first night, I dreamt only good dreams and woke refreshed. I opened my blinds to let in the light. A grand new day. I put some music on. I stepped into a hot shower. So what that I didn't have a shower curtain? I had a closet of fresh clothes and plenty of time to cook and eat breakfast before work. Outside, the morning was crisp and clean. In the breeze, the glorious tang of the sea. In my mind, the freshness of all fresh things. I walked up the street to my car, my eyes roving over the buildings where my neighbors lived. I felt a new appreciation for stucco. Beneath my feet, the sidewalk split in patterns delicate as lacework. And here was rosemary, fragrant in a planter. I took note. Someday I would pinch a sprig to make some bread. I would learn to bake. I twirled my keys and a thought came to me. The world is a flower unfurling. The words played in me as I approached my car, where, tucked under the wiper, was a neat white envelope. Could it be a love letter already? I lifted the wiper and plucked it out. Inside, a ticket from the street sweeper. A $50 fine. This was the morning of Thursday, January 15th, 2003. The next morning, a second street sweeping ticket was waiting for me. Those early days, I was a goddamn dreaming fool. So, a little bit of a rough start, but here's a poem. It's called Third and Orange. This is the title poem. It's the last night in June, and I'm on my way to a neighborhood bar when I pass a man and a woman perched in plastic armchairs on the fenced-in lawn of a rundown duplex. Side by side, they booze and curse each other's haggard faces. He, exhausted. God damn it, I told you she's just a friend. She, frothing. Just a friend? Bullshit, George. I saw you sucking her tit at the back of the boat. A fisherman and his fish wife, souring in muddy porch light. This is ugly truth. And yet, part of me wants to pull up a chair or lean against their gate and listen to them hash things out. But I keep my head down as I slip past because I know enough to know that whatever the rest of their story is, it doesn't belong to me. And I'm thankful to be so young and untouched by sleaze, forgetting for the moment I'm neither so young nor so untouched. At the bar, I copy their words onto the napkin under my first beer, telling myself that at some point, somehow, they will become useful. Several napkins later, I pay up and head back to my studio apartment, back down 3 blocks through the gray-blue glow of street lamps. I stop at my corner, the corner of 3rd and Orange, where behind the graffitied plexiglass of a newspaper dispenser, press telegram headlines announce nothing I care to read about. For the world is now in the first hour of the first day of another June, and once again, yesterday's news is old news, and I'm just waiting for the light to change. Overhead, a few faint stars glint like sequins tangled in night fog that swirls in off the ocean this time of year and settles over this stuccoed neighborhood of named and numbered streets. By the time the late morning sun finally burns away the last of this fog, I'll be a half pot of coffee in, warming tortillas on an open flame and scrambling eggs to the familiar voices of weekend public radio. And I'll still have absolutely no idea that in less than 2 months, I will meet you for the first time and my life will change in the most amazing and unforgettable of ways. So this is my neighbor Mark, former neighbor Mark. I'm going to read a poem about another neighbor. And this is an older gentleman. His name was Waco, which always struck me as strange. But this is called Neighbor. This is for Waco, who lives in the next building over, whose kitchen door opens opposite my kitchen door in the narrow passage that runs between our 2 shoebox apartments, who smokes cigarettes down to the filter or farther, who keeps more girlfriends than I do, and who salutes every passing woman, young or old, good-looking or not, with a smile and a "hello, baby," and is always saluted back. This is for Waco, who sings up to the windows of crying children in the apartments above us. Canta, no llores. Who was born and raised in Norway and came for work in the harbor, who sailed with the merchant marines in World War II, and whose knotty forearms bloom blots of indigo ink, who ambles with 2 canes on legs as badly bowed as my grandfather's, whose face is furrowed from decades outdoors, but whose stub-fingered handshake still clasps like a vice, who was the only neighbor to introduce himself first when I first moved to this town, and who I sit with sometimes over coffee or beer, whose small company in this narrow passage keeps us in conversation and laughter, which I will remember long after his time here is up and I have moved on. This is a poem called Ambition, and this is about another neighbor. Preparing a trip to Bangkok, a good friend makes neat piles atop his bed. Pants, shorts, shirts, socks, underwear, toiletries, passport, ticket printout. Across from him, I sit on the carpet with my back against the lone armchair, sipping a can of Tecate, popping lime pulp with my front teeth, as I flip through a book of E.E. Cummings he plans to take with him. What do you think, he says, and dumps 2 fistfuls of colored condoms onto the bed. Will I need all these? Looking up at him, I see how different we are. Man, I hope you'll need 2, 3, 4, 5 times as many. This happy hope makes him smile wide. Jesus, that would be a tall order. A tall order indeed. Then he stuffs everything into a carry-on bag for his red-eye flight, and we head out laughing for a couple farewell schooners at a bar up the street. The aspiring photographer reveals his big plan. I'm going to take the perfect picture of a normal person, taking normal pictures of a perfect people on perfect beaches, doing the perfectly normal things that perfect people on perfect beaches normally do. Then he puts down the bong and adds, after that, I'm going to throw some cute little babies in little cute clothes and take some cute little pictures of them too. It'll be money. I trusted that good writing would come looking for me. It would find me because it knew where I lived. It would recognize me by my golden ring and know what had to happen. It would understand what sort of fool I was and that I needed it to play nice. And sometimes it came and played nice. Poems like little miracles bestowed themselves on me whole. Whole. Were they any good? Who cared? They had come to me, chosen me. They were mine. They came to me as I rode my bike to school and work, walked the halls between classes, searched for a title in the library stacks, lifted crates of milk, stocked shelves with canned food, rang up customers at the checkout stand, fixed breakfast, and made dinner. At all hours, dark or light, words and ideas came. The brilliant arc of a story or some fulsome final scene would shoot through me out of nowhere. Sometimes only a line or two would come, maybe a single phrase, but the way they jumped in me, so sweet and willing. I knew their friends would come, dancing along, arms outstretched, radiant, and I would sweep them up and take them home. Within me was great promise. This thundering thought alone was enough to console me. How many countless good ideas I carried to the page. Ideas for stories so powerful they would make readers weep. So ardent they would sear the soul of anyone who picked them up. One or two would, I was sure of it, melt men's minds. If only I could find the time to sit down and write. I pedaled harder, drove faster to get home. But when the fever passed and I read back over what I'd written, my God, whatever had glowed or gloated in me now groaned and growled. I cringed at my own ridiculousness. This was writhing, not writing. What the hell had happened? Had I not gotten home quick enough? Had I not written fast enough? Why couldn't I transfer my promise to the page? So many good ideas teased me, then turned their backs and walked away. So I let them go. And good riddance. The little shits could come get some other schmuck to do their work. They hadn't been worth the effort anyways. They weren't half as good as I thought. So it went. Every now and then I got so fed up I quit writing altogether. I just refused to do it. Days would go by and I'd ignore my head, dismiss every silly impulse, and let the ideas pass on by on their way to the next chump in line. Fuck 'em. Such an attitude made me feel generous, carefree. I was in control. My hands and mind could be put to better use. But when this superior feeling ran out, I was back at it, furious, scribbling on scraps of paper, writing on the back of my hand in a notebook, opening new computer files. That most of the ideas would be abandoned or lost did not matter. I was giving in to compulsion. And as long as I kept storing up ideas, I didn't have to sit down and sweat over developing them. I clung to the idea that writing was something that would just happen gradually or in a burst. Any day, a great idea could occur, and as long as I was ready, all I needed to do was sit back and channel it. Let it flow, let it speak through me. In anticipation, I kept paper and pen handy. Computers couldn't be trusted. But how to turn the good idea into something more after it arrived? I knew it could be done because I'd done it myself a few times, but I was becoming afraid of the work it took. Ideas had a way of starting as such buoyant, weightless things. Why did they always have to become so damn heavy? I dug my heels in. I told myself stupid things like, somehow the work will work itself out. I was unwilling to concede the point to virtually every real writer I'd read on the subject, unwilling even to learn from my own experience that the writing was the work. But I rejected the burden of this simple truth along with another. If I wanted to get more work done, wouldn't it be best to approach writing with some methodical plan, like a schedule? Maybe. But schedules meant work, and work meant drudgery. And did I really want to write if it had to be like that? I was on too much of a schedule already. I was busy living. I worked. I went to school. I had bills to pay, dishes in the sink. My bathtub needed scrubbing. And the sun was so pretty. The rain so inviting. There was a world to explore. And wouldn't my mother appreciate a call? And what about my brother? I must consider the plight of my brother. In my daily rounds, it seemed all things were infinitely more pressing or pleasant than a confrontation with words and beginnings that bloated in the mind only to die on the page. So why make myself crazy? Why allow things to get so desperate? Maybe it was best to take it easy, stop trying to force things. I could coast along just storing up ideas. So that's what I did. Thank you. This poem's called Rite of Spring. And a lot of beer drinking happened. Rite of Spring. Tonight I write of spring and the all-day rain whose fall whet a thirst for Friday night, the first in weeks free to drink our fill and cut and thrust and chum till last call we're out the door with a couple easygoing gals, tramping and cheering and swearing, the great glory of saturation down a 4th Street full flood. Of spring pluperfect I write, of yesterday and last night and this morning's snooze, shaken by alarms, set for Saturday's midday box shift that starts too soon at 10, when there is coffee and friends and a simple scrambled breakfast out a screen door that swings into sun on a garden patio and brick under bare feet, and never enough time to compose enough lines in every woman's name and to revise and revise until I get it right, until all my pages fill with praise and light. It seems to me that many who express a desire to write or pursue some other creative path find it easier to drink beer, dream, loaf, despair, read, and talk shit. That is, they find it easier to do almost anything other than the work creativity requires. I know this because I'm one of them, and I've met plenty others like me along the way. But there are some among us who seem to be able to manage it all. Write, make music, paint, teach, build things, drink beer, work a respectable job, raise a family, stay fit, stay social. While in Long Beach, I was lucky to develop friendships with a few in both groups. One of these friends I used to meet for coffee at Broadway Donuts on days I didn't have class or worked the late shift. We liked the older couple who ran the place. They weren't much for small talk, but they had decent coffee at a decent price and made the best apple fritters. Because there was nowhere to sit inside their tiny shop, we sat outside. In plastic chairs, we talked about books and music, the news, anything that entered our heads as the shop doors swung open and closed and people came and went. Sometimes someone we knew would stop and chat and sip their coffee with us. When old-timers in the neighborhood came around with their dogs, we bullshitted with them too. Across the street in the 7-Eleven parking lot, some poor bastard, already stumbling drunk or high, would holler and make a scene. Cars rolled past with stereos so loud they made your eyeballs rattle. Now and then, a woman stunning in the morning light would glide past and curve the topic of conversation for a moment. On mornings we had time, we'd shuffle over to a nearby cafe to take advantage of their $1 breakfast, 2 eggs, 2 strips of bacon, and 2 triangles of buttered bimbo toast for $1 cash. Frugality was a challenge we mutually embraced. Since we lived only a couple blocks from each other, in the evenings we'd meet at one of our apartments to share a meal and listen to music. He was a musician and made a habit of writing songs, all of which were good, some of which were great. Sometimes he took up his guitar and played. It helped that we both liked beer. At our neighborhood bar, we'd sit and talk over $5 liters of pale ale, one of the last best deals on drinks I ever saw. He had a special genius for plucking ideas for stories and poems from our rambling conversations. He saw creative opportunities almost everywhere he looked. "That's a good idea for a short story," he'd say. And it would be. "You should write a poem about that." And I knew I should. Over a game of pool, he'd begin with a, "What if?" And together we'd spin out the idea until it was practically written. But most of these ideas were lost on the walk home. The rest dissipated during the next day's 4 a.m. shift at the grocery store, or evaporated while I worked on an essay for school. This is called Oracle of the Open Heart. If anybody doesn't know what an oracle is, this is the tradition in ancient Greece where you would go visit somebody. People think of it now as being somebody who was probably had some sort of mental health thing going on, and they would speak sometimes in words and using language that was very difficult, poetic and abstract and strange. But inside it, if you could read it right, was some sort of truth. They were telling you something about the future, and you just had to kind of work it out. And you had to go a long ways to talk to these people. And so this is called the Oracle, the Open Heart. Oh, what lovelies we spoke, glozing odic over not going home, or swooning for a young woman, a poet from school I know, who composed a poem of one lone oval O. She called it Love Letter. And so it was so. Sole and solemn she seemed to know. But lo, how foolish in our cups we grow, opining on stools about souls, about how thoroughly ours are shot with lost lots and longings that knock and crowd and hope for another oniric O of our own. Another bold, voweled vow of love, another fond promise not to soften or become as the oath of youth, overgrown by doubt and old, but to go on hot and unbroken as vapor from mouths in the cold. And so it is so. Afloat on booze, another night flowed, onward for hours until we strode home alone, our pockets hollow, our eyes low, poking holes in the truths of love we told, as if mortals could ever wholly know. For none knows more than the oracle of the open heart. She it is who discloses truth from the core. She it is who knows our best and loveliest O's come so seldom, no words can totally unfold just how voluptuously they flow, forthcoming like froth in honey, mountain sweet and moving slow. And she it is who honoring exposes the holy heart of God and love, how both lie wound around the same swollen symbol of one absolute and extraordinary letter O. Thank you. Mark sounds pretty good, isn't he? The band sounds amazing. This is really, really beautiful. I hope you guys are enjoying this. This is going to be the sort of closeout, and it looks like we're making pretty good time, so maybe if you guys want to have one more song after this, then we'll do the open mic, and then we are going to, I hope you guys stick around. I know I've heard that a lot of you guys bounce out after the open mic. I really hope you don't, because we're going to finish this out, and it's going to be really cool. Yeah, the encore. You would gratify me if you stay. I appreciate it. Anyways, let's pick up from the story. Anybody shop at Trader Joe's? All right. I worked at Trader Joe's for 8 years. During that time, I dreamt of John Updike's A and P grocery clerks. I dreamt of Studs Terkel's box boy. I dreamt of William Eggleston's cart pusher, dapper in his apron, collared shirt, and tie. Those were the days when being a box boy, you looked good. I dreamt of what I could do to help dignify the American grocery worker, a character so familiar, relatable, and full of dramatic potential. Markets were a rich and timeless setting, but what would be my plot? Between customers, I made notes on register paper whenever some interaction suggested humor, intrigue, or insight. Arranging apples and oranges, onions and potatoes, I sketched scenes set in the produce aisle. In the stockroom, to the sound of the hydraulic box crusher, I cribbed from my coworkers dialogue more interesting than I could invent. I winced whenever one of these promising sketches turned up as mulch forgotten deep in the pocket of pants I'd put through the wash. One evening, on a bike ride home from work, I stopped off for a pint at a Second Street bar. It was midweek, mid-May, and my first year at Cal State was now behind me. I sat alone at the bar, at peace, reading. But after a few pages, I became so distracted by the music, I had to put my book down to listen. It was unspeakably stunning, revelatory. What was it? Astro Weeks, the bartender said. I made a note on my hand. What was I doing with myself? What was the action of my life? I was blessed, but idle, biding my time, but lacking any larger plan. I believed it was enough to just go to work and school, to just pay better attention to beauty as I read in the grass or swam in the ocean or strolled the streets. Were these not valid ways to find oneself? Were these not valid ways to fall in love? I'm going to read a few poems. No, pardon me. My page is wrong. Cashiering early one Sunday afternoon, I remembered I was happy. It was late summer. I was singing along to the Beatles on the store stereo. I had half an hour to go till the end of my shift. I had plans to cook dinner with friends. The lines at checkout were 8 carts deep. The store was swollen with families, hungover couples, and Leisure World retirees. I was doing my thing, greeting customers, asking if they'd found everything okay, making small talk as I bagged their groceries and bid them farewell. Life was bouncing along. At some point, I looked up to notice a young woman step into my line. She was smiling and singing too, moving closer with each customer I sent out the door. Soon we were standing in front of each other. I was taking the basket she was handing me. Her vegetables were being rung up. There was a light in her eyes. We spoke. Maybe we said something about the Beatles. Maybe I praised George Harrison, the fresh weather, her patience, her smile, her freckles, whatever. I was full of praise. It bubbled in me like spring water. Then I was putting her bag in her hands. Our entire interaction couldn't have lasted much more than 3 minutes, and I never asked her name. Later that evening, in the kitchen with friends, I was still standing in front of her. 2 weeks later, a new semester had started, and I was coming from the library to work a rare overnight shift. I walked in through the sliding doors just before closing time, and my heart jumped when I saw she was one of the last customers in the store. I had hoped to see her again, and now she was even more beautiful than I remembered. In her hands was a bouquet of cut flowers. A coworker rang her up. I hovered close, blushing, giddy, grasping for words that wouldn't come the way they had before. I was a fool. When my shift finished at 3 a.m., I walked out to my car and found, under my windshield wiper, yet another parking ticket. But this was no ticket. It was a handwritten invitation. Would you like to meet me for coffee sometime? At the bottom, a name, a number. She'd been looking for me too. I drove home in a swoon through empty streets. Every light was green. Love. This is called bioluminescence. I've seen this in a couple places in the world. If you don't know what it is, it's those little organisms that live in the water and you brush across or you swim across or you ride your boat across and the water blooms with light. And I thought Long Beach was too polluted to have this sort of thing. So this is about a night that I went down on Long Beach Pier, empty and quiet and cold. And yeah, it's called bioluminescence. Just how we arrived at Pier's End past midnight cannot now be said, nor can memory tell what we had in mind walking out alone. But you followed me, up and over the gate, down the ramp to the boat dock afloat on the flat, black water, lapping the pontoons upon which we rose slowly and slowly fell, breathing the briny night where we sat, removed our shoes, rolled our pant legs up, swung our feet over and slipped them under the cold surface as the sun-dried scurf of baitfish guts, crusting splintered planks, pressed our palms. And you, with your wild sound, rang and kicked the water into a brilliance, into a million milky Tiffany lamps, shooting like stars, scattering across the muddled mirror of space, surfing out into a nothing that made us spring into something of our truer selves, part child, part criminal, part ineffable cretin, just happy to splash and splash until we realized if it weren't for the hour or the lack of towels or a change of clothes or that I weren't the boulder, we could perhaps hazard a plunge into that living galaxy lit below. This next poem is called Cigarettes and Coffee. Anybody here an Otis Redding fan? All right. It's hard to believe that guy died at 27. He left a lot of really good music, very heartfelt. I'm going to bring him on stage with me for this one. Cigarettes and Coffee. It's 2 weeks until Christmas, and as cold as this town gets outside when we step through the door of my studio apartment, we're flush with drink and back from dancing to the songs of Neil Diamond, sung by Phil Shane. Two names forever fastened to yours. In the kitchen, I pour us pints of tap water, turn on the oven, my poor fireplace, and lower down its door to melt the chill that seeps through warped wood-framed windows and settles like winter around the room. I hand you your glass, which you clink against mine, and I turn on the stereo low as we recall our conversation with the older couple we left dancing at the bar. How long did you tell them we'd been married? 5 years, I say, though we've hardly known each other a month. You think they believed us? I believed us. Me too, you say, with a smile. It's late and we're tired, but wide awake, sitting close on the edge of my futon bed, listening to Otis Redding sing. Song's saxophone loosens something lodged within. Where have you been? You rest your head on my shoulder and answer as in a dream. Searching for you, searching everywhere for you. I don't know what else to do but give thanks. Thank you. Thank you, God. Thank you, Mr. Redding. And pray, please, 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 be sweet as our bodies buzz and the room fills with lush and drowsy heat. Got 3 more poems. How are we doing on time for that? We're about 1:50. 5 minutes?
Probably like 10.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll finish with the song then. This is called empiricism. Everything that we know, that we can know, has to filter through our senses to become knowledge, to become experience. That's what it means to be in a body. And this is a praise to that. Empiricism. To better hear the thick hush of your dark hair, I have my ears pair. Wrapped to the pulse of your each wrist, these living hands form gentle fists. So wholly this knows the spice of your body charms, the back of your neck, the inside of your arms. And this, my heart, beats hard and best with my chest pressed against your chest. To my eyes drink in the country of your thighs as I savor every place above your belly, below your waist. And I hereby pledge my lips unto the very tips of your fingers and your toes, so that every bit of you, every bit of me, better knows. There are many moments that live in our minds, and often for me they're connected to song or poem, which is just another form of song essentially by people that can't play instruments. And this is a memory. This is called marginalia. Marginalia, again, is the little markings that you make in the margin, annotations and I don't know, whatever. This is called marginalia. My socks are off and my feet are snug under your butt between the cushion of my couch where we study. But how can I concentrate on textbooks when the 17th century is a dead past, sad and stale and colorless without you? The pages in this chapter detail an age gone cold, an epoch out of which you will never rise to pour a glass of water from the sink and lean against the frame of a kitchen door in unbuttoned blue jeans, long sleeves, and ankle socks, and tilt your head to drink as you did just now. I fancy somehow a day, some little history may gloss us to, and so I make this note in the margin about the moment you cup my face in your hands and kiss the center of my head, and my eyes enclose their record, a vision of you I don't yet fear to lose. With your biology book, you resettle beside me, and I slip my feet back under you and return to the 17th century, where eventually Julia and her Robert Herrick compel me to a much deeper study upon your magnetic beauty and the comely curvature of your neck. I'm going to close with this. This is called Sprout. This is also dedicated to spring. Sprout. To become the word sprout, to sow my spirit in a syllable, sibilant and sounding out, to dispel death puckered, plosive breath. To simply imply green, to evoke tendril life in you and youth, to feel your voice and hear it ring, to wisp within you infinitively the tender promise of infinite spring. Thank you.